I've had a couple of clients come in and a spouse has unexpectedly passed away, and there's been not so fun consequences. As I mentioned in our last video, we had one client come in and she had 4 children, and her husband very unexpectedly passed away in a motorcycle accident. And she came in and the judge had actually added her minor children to the deed of her house. Now, by the time she came to us, 2 of the kids were no longer minors, 2 were. So that was a real mess that we had to clean up because she wasn't able to refinance her house. She wasn't able to sell it. She wasn't able to put it into a living trust to avoid probate as long as the minor kids were still on that deed. So we actually had to take it back through probate to get them off the deed, and then we're able to transfer it into the living trust to protect that moving forward. So that's one of the examples of a real life case that we've seen at my firm of what happens when someone passes away without a will. Another example I have is I have a doctor client, and his wife had been married previously and had a daughter. And her husband died very unexpectedly in a small plane accident. And he had left his estate without a will, and he left his life insurance without any beneficiaries. So because it did not have beneficiaries, it went to the daughter, partly to the daughter. And what happened with that is that in the state of Georgia, if you leave assets to a minor, either beneficiary designated or just because you don't have a will or even through your will, what happens is that the state appoints a conservator to oversee that money until your child reaches the age of 18 if there is no will. Because he did not have a will at 18, this daughter was set to inherit a lump sum of money. And my client, this pretty wealthy physician who had all but adopted this daughter, was paying for her college, taking care of her, loved her like his own daughter, was like, hey, what do I do to avoid her getting this check? Because as a lot of us can relate to, 18-year-olds probably should not be inheriting lump sums of money most of the time. And I was like, honestly, it's her money. There's nothing we can do on the back end to avoid this. So just educate her, take her to a financial advisor, let her sit down and let her learn the best investment tools and the consequences if she just decides to spend it all. But ultimately, it is her money. So those are 2 real life examples that we've had where someone has passed away without some type of will and things have gotten really messy. A lot of people also don't realize that, remember, even if your name is on the deed with your spouse and they pass away, unless that deed for your property says jointly with rights of survivorship, you probably will have to go to probate to get the other 50% of your own property. And that's when things can get really messy if there's no will, because then you might end up inadvertently splitting your house with either your spouse's children or your children together, and that may not be the best case scenario. There's a way to help avoid that, but again, the best way to avoid this is just to have a will so that everything is very clear if something unexpectedly happens to one of y'all.